To James Cleverly.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank my friend and colleague, the Right Honourable Member for Central Devon, setting out the opening case for the opposition's position with regard to stamp duty. This is a policy that I feel particularly passionate about. It was one that I put forward when I was running for leadership of the Conservative Party, and like all good ideas, it has been embraced by my friend and colleague, the Leader of the Opposition. But more than that, and this is a really key point, I am also particularly glad that my friend and colleague, the Shadow Chancellor, and his Shadow team have worked hard to make sure that cutting stamp duty is not just a headline, it is a fully costed and set out policy. And the Leader of the Opposition has, I think, in a very magnanimous way, said that if the government wants to steal this idea and implement it now, they will actually get no opposition from us if they choose to do so. And I think this is a typical generosity of spirit shown by the Leader of the Opposition, because clearly the party opposite are struggling to come up with credible economic plans of their own. So they are very, very welcome to steal the economic plans that we have put in place. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I was struck by the nature of this debate in a positive way in many instances. And it has been mentioned by a number of my colleagues on the Conservative benches that the expected wall of thoughtless opposition to this proposal hasn't actually materialised at quite the scale that we expected. I mean, it has materialised in some instances, but that is only to be expected. What we heard on a number of occasions in a number of speeches, and I'll make reference to some of the contributions in the debate today as I go through my speech, what we heard on a number of occasions from the benches opposite was that they recognised that stamp duty was a bad tax. They recognised that stamp duty was a counterproductive tax. They recognised that stamp duty had a dampening, drag anchor effect on the housing market. But then they went on to say, but we need the money, that they're desperate to have the tax revenues. And I think that that shows something which is a fundamental challenge that, frankly, the party opposite is going to have to deal with in November of this month, which is, if they cannot agree that this damaging, counterproductive tax cannot be got rid of, then what tax are they willing to reduce? And if they're going to sit in front of the House and basically just say, frankly, there is not a single tax in the British system that they are willing to cut, reduce, or remove, then the mask has slipped, Madam Deputy Speaker. The mask has slipped. Under a Labour government, this country faces ever-increasing taxes. This is basically what they are saying, Madam Deputy Speaker. They admit this tax is a bad tax, but they're saying they are not willing to vote for its removal because they want to see, they need to see, they're desperate to see taxes going up. That's fundamentally the argument put by many people on the benches opposite. The position, I will.
Does he agree with me that it's slightly further compounded by that? Because when it comes to making spending reductions, we've already seen on the floor of the House that the one attempt to do that was gutted mid-discussion when it was pulled, an amendment was pulled from the bill that dealt with welfare. So therefore, they also won't take any spending cuts either, which doesn't leave much else bar borrowing, in my estimation.
My honourable friend is absolutely spot on, and this was a point I think very, very well highlighted by my good friend, the honourable member for Bridgewater. He highlighted that on this side of the House, we felt that this damaging and counterproductive tax should be removed. And as I say, my good friend, the Right Honourable Member for Central Devon, has set out how this was going to be paid for through a reduction in the welfare bill, something which I know has universal support on this side of the House. But my honourable friend, the member for Bridgwater, highlighted that not only is a reduction of welfare something that we think is a necessary and good idea, it was something that the Labour front bench used to think was a necessary and good idea until, with great leadership, they were told by their backbenchers to stop thinking that it was a necessary and good idea and start thinking that it was a terrible idea. Such leadership from the backbenches is something that I admire from that party. And if only the Labour front bench had anything like the spine of the Labour backbenches, then actually the country might not be in quite such a dire economic state. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labour Party, the Labour benches, as I say, the Labour benches have basically said they are unwilling to cut even the worst of the taxes because basically they want to see taxes going up. The Lib Dem position is yoga-like in its ability to bend, pretzel-like, because one after another, the speakers from those benches stood up and said, we agree that this is a bad tax. We agree that this is a counterproductive tax. We agree that it's a tax that needs to go. And I suspect others on my benches, thought, here we come, here we go. The crescendo, the pièce de résistance, with those speeches saying, which is why you will see us in the lobbies with you, ensuring that this motion is passed. But that's not what we heard. That is not what, in a minute, I've got a punchline to get to. This is not what we heard. What we heard was that we think this is a bad tax that should be got rid of, but we are not going to vote to say it's a bad tax that should be got rid of because, which, Madam Deputy Speaker, is always,
that sums it up.
Which is always the Lib Dems punchline. It's always the Lib Dems punchline. I was waiting for that explosion of political integrity, only to be presented with a political damp squib. And I will give way to the honourable gentleman.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way after his fantastic punchline, which everybody really enjoyed.
Yes. Where was it?
Exactly. He obviously wasn't paying enough attention to the arguments we were making on these benches. Right. Yes, we did agree with the analysis of stamp duty being a poor tax, but we could not support your motion today because we do not think it is a credible plan for abolishing it. What we'd like to see is a much more holistic review of property taxes alongside a credible plan. And there was no credible plan in it today. We do not trust the public spending cut proposals that he's put forward.
Oh, Madam Deputy Speaker, you've got to love them, haven't you? Genuine, you've got to love them. Never seen a fence that they would not sit on. Never seen a position that they would not contort around. These are our principles, is what they say. These are our principles, but so are these, and so are these other ones as well. It is that clarity, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that clarity that we really value from the party. And I will give way to the lady opposite.
Thank the right honourable gentleman for giving way, and I'll be a little bit clearer on our principles. We won't be joining you in the voting lobby tonight because we won't be voting for unfunded tax cuts that predominantly serve the wealthy and do nothing to help first-time buyers or ordinary working people up and down the country.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Madam Deputy Speaker, that is how you actually have a position. It's the wrong position, but it's at least a position. And the point is, the honourable lady keeps talking about unfunded tax cuts, but she's getting her language back to front. You don't fund a tax cut because it is the British people that fund government spending. So when you ease government spending, you are easing the burden on the British taxpayer. It is spending that needs to be funded, not a reduction in spending. And the reason, and this is where I'll make the point, this is where I will reinforce a number of what I thought were very, very strong interventions in support of this motion. I was very struck by my honourable friend, the member for Windsor, who spoke about his own experience trying to get on the housing ladder and how that enthusiasm was suppressed, was diminished by the realisation that stamp duty was going to make getting that first foot on the housing ladder even more difficult. And I recognise, and the honourable member for Pendle and Clitheroe, I think made a legitimate point, that this is a tax which does affect different parts of the country very differently. And I think it is a fair point that he has made, that there will be many parts of the country where it is not typical that people are paying stamp duty land tax or a significant quantum, a significant scale of stamp duty land tax. But that is not a good reason to deny this reduction in cost to those people in the country that do. And although in his constituency there might not be many, I guarantee he will not have to travel very far before he starts to meet people who are being dissuaded from purchasing properties because of the stamp duty land tax. And certainly for those members representing constituencies near big cities, wherever they are across the country, or certainly those who represent constituencies in the south of the country, there are significant numbers of people who are paying this tax. And it has been mentioned by members on my benches, too many to single out, that it's not just the impact it has on people who are or may be paying the stamp duty land tax that this proposal impacts positively. Because I guarantee almost all of us can imagine a streetscape that I'm about to describe. Perhaps houses in a Victorian or Edwardian part of our constituencies. Perhaps semi-detached or detached houses on what used to be the periphery of those towns or cities. Perhaps those towns and cities have now expanded beyond that, but there will typically be a band of properties populated disproportionately by older couples or older people. They will often have been in those constituencies for many, many decades. Their children have moved out and they are now under-occupying those properties with perhaps 2, 3, maybe even 4 bedrooms spare. But they are deterred from downsizing because of the fear of the stamp duty that they will have to pay. Estimates show that 2.8 million people would consider downsizing or right-sizing, as my honourable friend said, if stamp duty were removed. What then happens is a ripple effect throughout the housing market, freeing up family houses for people who are currently in overcrowded accommodation. Not only that, the London School of Economics estimates that for every housing transaction, an estimated £6,000 of economic activity is pumped into the local market. Local builders doing refurbishments, perhaps doing extensions, fitting new bathrooms, fitting new kitchens, soft furnishings, white goods. These are the things that people typically buy when they move. And what type of business typically provides those goods and services? Local businesses, SMEs, embedded in their communities. These are the people who are being denied economic activity because this tax is stifling the property market. We need liquidity in the property market. We need people buying and selling. We need people spending money with local businesses, in local shops, across the whole of the country. This is what reducing the tax burden on people does. This is what removing stamp duty land tax will achieve. And yet, on that side of the house, and on this side of the house, we are seeing people contorting themselves to find excuses to not reduce this burdensome tax. And I genuinely don't understand why. I genuinely don't understand why. 2.8 million homes could be released into the market. And if each of those homes had 2 or 3 spare bedrooms, that would immediately eclipse the 1.5 million homes that Labour are desperately trying to convince the country are going to be built under their tenure. And it can be done almost immediately without a brick being laid. And more importantly, Madam Deputy Speaker, without any government subsidy needed. This is what the House is saying no to. But not these benches. These benches understand aspiration. The Conservative Party has always been the party of aspiration. This has always been the party that helped people get on the housing ladder and up the housing ladder, because that is a noble and normal aspiration, and one that we support, even if the other benches don't. And I will give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
For giving way, he wonders why it might not have something to do with the 14 billion quid that he hasn't worked out how the government are going to find. But if it was so easy in all those days before COVID, why did his party never do it in 14 years?
Madam Deputy Speaker, it was these benches that reduced the stamp duty burden, something that was reversed almost immediately when this party came into office. And the simple truth of the matter is this has always been the party. The Conservative Party has always been the party of home ownership and aspiration, helping people have a stake in not just the country and the economy, but in their local communities, helping parents stay closer to their own parents so that grandparents can see their grandchildren, creating flexibility so when job opportunities are created around the country, people can actually move to those jobs without having a financial penalty for doing so. Madam Deputy Speaker, that is what is at stake. That is what we are proposing. That is what these benches will continually fight to see, even in the face of the opposition, from a party that should be about aspiration, that used to be about aspiration, that has lost its way, drifted from the path of righteousness, and is going to oppose, if they do as they claim to do, they're going to oppose the removal of what is being regularly described by economic experts as the single most damaging tax on our books. And as I say, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I will conclude with this point. I could go on if you want. But I will conclude on this point, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will conclude on this point. If the benches opposite and the benches to my left, both metaphorically and physically, are unwilling to countenance the removal of what is pretty much universally described as the single most counterproductive tax, what tax will they remove? And as I say, I think the mask has slipped. They will not bring themselves to reduce any taxes. And that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is something that the British people will notice, and so will the markets, because the unwillingness of the Labour Party to make any kind of difficult decisions with regard to public spending or the reduction of the tax burden on the British people is not just painful for those taxpayers themselves, but it is going to be painful for our children and our grandchildren, who are going to pay increased amounts of money to fund the spending, which can be, as my honourable friend said, it can be the only way that the Chancellor is going to try and dig herself out of this hole. And that is a burden on generations to come. So the choice, Madam Deputy Speaker, when we divide, and I suspect we will divide, the choice is between a party that seeks to support aspiration, support families, support small businesses, support the building trade, or those parties that will oppose all those things. Increase the tax burden on British people, increase the tax burden on the children and grandchildren, and indeed the great-grandchildren of the people alive today. That is not what my party is about. That is not what this country should be about. And I urge all those people who want to do right by small businesses and future generations to support this motion and scrap this deeply, deeply counterproductive tax. And I commend this motion to the House.
Minister.